Hey, third graders. So today for Number Sense, what we're going to do is we are going to talk through some patterns. And patterns this week are going to help us because what we're doing this week is all about finding patterns and using those patterns to help us out. So this might seem again really repetitive or really kind of like a kinder first, second grade thing, but it's going to be really important for you to see and your brain to be flexible with these numbers. So I want you to think first, what patterns do you see on these cards? Remember, when you have a good strategy, you're going to give me a thumb up. If you have multiple strategies, you can give me multiple fingers. If you have something that I say in a minute, you can give the agree sign. Okay, I see that there are patterns in kind of with, I'm using the same colors. I'm seeing a pattern in that the ones that are red and blue are addition problems. I'm seeing the ones in black are odd numbers. All of those are different patterns. My blue boxes are all even numbers. My red boxes are all odd numbers. But I'm also seeing something else, and I wonder if you see it. What's 5 plus 5? Yeah, it's 10. And then look at what the next one is. It's 11. So what's 6 plus 6? 12, and then 13. So 7 and 7 is? Good. 14, and 8 and 8 is? Good, 16, you're right. So I'm curious, what would the very next card be? If I extended this by one card, what would it be? Yeah, it'd be the number 17, right? It would also be outlined in black. What would the next one be after that? Yeah, it would be a red 9 plus 9. So one thing that you can do as we are working with patterns and looking at numbers and finding patterns within the numbers is you guys can create things like this and give them to family members. These are fun little riddles and activities that you guys can totally do and create. And sometimes it's really fun to throw in different color coding options as well. Okay, get ready for mini lesson. It's coming up. Welcome back, third grade mathematicians. I am so excited to be with you today because today we get to learn something totally new, something that you have not learned in kinder, first, or second grade, something that is totally special just for third graders. Are you ready to know what it is? Okay, good. Come close. It is rounding. We are going to get to learn today what it really means to round a number. And this is just going to be more of introduction. We're going to spend the rest of the week rounding to the nearest hundreds and to the nearest tens. And so I am going to have you think about a time that you went on a road trip. Maybe you didn't go on a road trip. Maybe you just drove to someone's house here in North Texas, or maybe you walked somewhere. Did you need to know exactly how far you went? Or did you just need to know about how far you went on something, how far you went, like traveled? Yeah. So I went on a trip a few months back and it was a 3-day drive. And the first day we drove 126 miles, and the second day we didn't make it near as far. We only did 97. And the third day was 165 miles. And so we drove 388 miles. But did you need to know that? Or if you asked me, hey, Miss Day, how far did you drive? Would it be better for me to say, oh, about 400, because 126 is close to 100, and 97 is close to 100, and 165 is close to 200. So 100, 100, and 200 is about 400. Yeah, I don't need to know specifically how many miles I drove, right? And you don't need that. I can just tell you about how far that we went. Because accuracy and being that specific doesn't really matter because I want to know about how far. So today, that's what we're going to look at. And so there's some specific language we're going to talk through today. You're going to hear me say the word round. You're also going to hear me say the word estimate or approximate, which just means about. We're also going to talk about rounding to the nearest 100, to the nearest 10. And again, here's that word reasonable. Reasonable is going to be the big one because we use rounding when we are solving word problems to make sure that we are getting a reasonable answer. Because sometimes when we have to regroup or like borrow and carry numbers and all of that, sometimes we can get really confused with our pictorial models or our expanded form of trying to solve all that. Sometimes we just need to know what's the number we're trying to get to, we're trying to get close to, so that when we do make a mistake, we can fix it, or that we can justify and reason our answer that it's a reasonable answer. So if I gave you this number sentence, 267 plus 496, I could solve that. But I can already see that there's regrouping in the ones place and the tens place. And that could cause some confusion. But I am smart and I know that 267 is about 300. And how I know that is because when I put it on a number line, 267 is way closer to 300 than it is 200. Okay? And 496 is the same way. It's almost 500. We are so close to 500. So if I know that 267 is about 300 and 496 is about 500, I can say that my sum here is probably about 800. Now, when I actually solve 267 plus 496, I get 763, which is way closer to 800 than it is 700. So 763 makes sense because it's about 800. So there's two ways that we know how to round. One is the directions. Sometimes we're going to be told round to the tens or round to the hundreds place. But other times we kind of have to use what would make sense. So here's what I mean. If I were going to go to Memorial High School or Lone Star High School or Trent or Stafford and see a play, I'm probably going to be rounding to my nearest tens because there's probably only a couple hundred people that are going to actually fit in that auditorium anyways. So I can probably round to my tens. However, if I'm going to a Cowboys game at their stadium, I am not going to round to the tens. That just does not make sense. I'm probably going to be rounding to the hundreds place or the thousands place. But in third grade, we're sticking to tens and hundreds. So let me show you an example and kind of walk you through our steps of rounding. And this is something we're going to revisit the rest of the week. So when we're rounding to the nearest 10 or 100, there's some steps that we're going to take. The first step is I want to write my number down. Here you can see the number in purple, 1,366. And then we're also going to round the number 293. So here I first write them down, and then I'm going to determine based on my instructions or the situation, am I going to round to the nearest hundreds or tens? Here it says nearest 10. So I'm going to round to the nearest tens place. So I underlined my number, my digit that is in the tens place. But then I drew something. I want you to tell me, what did I draw here? What is this tool called? Oh, I heard someone say it. It's an open number line. Great job, because it is just a section of this number line, because number lines go on and on and on for forever. And this is a section. So it's an open one because it also has arrows on both ends. So I want to draw my open number line, but then I need to put some very important information on there. There's three things I need to put on there. I need to put two boundary numbers. We've also called these friendly numbers in the past. They're usually multiples of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, but they could also be multiples of 100, 100, 200, 300, 400. Kind of depends on what you're rounding to. Here, my nearest 10. So I need to figure out what 10 is on the left side of my number that I'm trying to round, and what boundary number is on my right side of it. So here you can see that 1,366 is between 1,360 and 1,370. You guys already know that. And then I want to also plot my midpoint. Halfway between 1,360 and 1,370 is 1,365. Once I plot both boundary points and my midpoint, then I'm going to plot my number that I'm trying to round, that 1,366. Okay? Once I do that, I can see which side of the boundary or which side of the midpoint number that I'm on. If I'm between the midpoint and the greater number, I'm going to round to the greater. If I'm between the lesser number and the midpoint, I'm going to round down to the previous 10. Okay? So let's look at 293. 293 is between 290 and 300. Then I'm going to plot my midpoint. Halfway between 290 and 300 is 295. So then I can plot my number that I'm rounding, which is 293. And I can see, oh, it's between the lesser boundary and the midpoint, which means I'm going to round down to the lesser boundary number. Okay? The same thing is true with the nearest 100, except this time my boundary numbers are going to be my nearest hundreds. So 1,366 is between 1,300 and 1,400, with 1,350 as my midpoint. Then 1,366 is between 1,350 and 1,400. So then I can see it's going to round up to 1,400. 293 is between 200 and 300. And we know, because we're awesome mathematicians, that 293 is way closer to 300. It's way far over there. So I still want to put my midpoint, but I know that when I plot 293, it's so close to 300, it's going to round up to that nearest hundred. I do want to point out to you, 293, when it's rounded to the nearest 10 or nearest 100, it rounds to the same number because 300 is the next 100, but it's also the next 10 because when I'm counting by tens, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, when I start at like 170, 180, 190, 200, those hundreds are also my tens, okay? So today and every day, I want you to be able to use rounding to help you determine the reasonableness of your answer in problem solving by determining what place you're rounding to, drawing your open number line, plotting your boundary points and your midpoint and the number you're rounding, and then go ahead and round. So off you go, mathematician.